Help!
Rotating. Rotating.
Rotating.
Rotating.
No, not that kind of rotating. Rotating is when you move from one site to another on a map. One of the biggest issues I see in Ranked is that some players don't really understand the importance of getting the timing right. In a game like Valorant, small mistakes like over-rotating or even not rotating at all are what causes players to lose rounds that they honestly shouldn't be. So with that being said, let's talk about what it means to rotate efficiently. As a defender, the first thing we need to be able to know is the difference between what it looks like when attackers are committing to the site versus when attackers are just applying pressure. When attackers commit to the site push, the telltale sign to look for is that they'll start using utility to execute out of the choke. If you see flashes, dashes, and thrashes coming out of the choke, you know they're committing to the push and you better get rotating. But when attackers are just applying pressure, their goal isn't to invade the site, but rather to try and debate you into wasting some defender utility or getting defenders to rotate over from the other site. So what does pressure look like? Usually in the form of noise, intentional footsteps, orb grabbing, and light utility usage to take control of main. A good rule of thumb is that if you see utility being used but only in main and not out of the choke, it's probably just pressure. But let's say it's getting a little too quiet on your side of the map, and you're convinced that the attackers are going to end in the opposite site. Instead of rotating the entire team over, send one guy over as the rotator and keep one player on the site as the anchor. The anchor is the player who stays locked into the site regardless of what's happening all over the map. They are the designated sentry that only rotates when the spike's position has been confirmed, meaning that they'll always be the last to rotate. Here's an example from G2 versus 100 Thieves. G2 attempts a B fake by expending the breach ult and sending Icy in for a potential frag. The pressure is enough to pull both the mid player and A rotator away from A, where G2 is grouping up to push. Notice Cryo playing as an A site anchor and as a result gets the info that the real hit is towards A and calls the A rotator to come back. He positions himself in a more passive angle to buy more time for help, and as a result, 100 Thieves were able to counter G2's fake.
Not looking for him, not hunting for him. The flash is straight from Busio towards heaven. This is all falling to pieces. And 100 Thieves have this one on lock.
Remember that attackers need to play with the spike, and as you climb the ranks, you'll begin playing with smarter opponents that either know when to rotate away or even know how to fake a site commit. So one of the best ways to combat over-rotating is to play anchors in each site so that you'll always have at least one player in the site ready to delay the execute.
Spike down, B.
The last thing I want to cover in this part is how you should go about rotating when the call comes in. In my opinion, you have two options, either regroup with your team or flank the enemy. Both have their pros and cons, but it'll ultimately depend on the situation. Take into consideration the enemy lineup. If they don't have agents that have utility to cover their back, consider flanking. Or if you have numbers advantage, it may be better to just aid the rest of your team by playing trades. In most cases though, I would argue that it's always more reliable to simply just regroup with your team. Why is rotating important as an attacker? Well, your primary objective is to take the site and plant the bomb, and it'll be easier for you if you push the site less defended. Being able to know where and how the defenders are positioned on the map can help you to decide where to hit for the best chances of success. So how do you know where the defenders are playing? A good rule of thumb is that most of the time, defenders will play a 2-1-2 setup, where two players are on each side with a single player in mid, or some variation of that setup. I'd argue that this is one of the more reliable setups for defenders as it keeps a balanced defensive line across the entire map. It's this defensive line, that I heard also be described as a chain, that helps you to know when and where you should rotate as an attacker. The goal of a good defense is to ensure that this line's connection between all defenders is maintained. The closer the defenders are together, the more compact the line is. Conversely, the more spread out the defenders are, the looser the line becomes. If the line is broken, defenders will move accordingly to re-establish the connection. Using this mental guide, you can begin to visualize the weak points in the enemy defense and it'll help you decide when and where to rotate. Let's take a look at this example from Fnatic Boaster. Boaster's primary plan this round is to set up an A split by first taking control of mid. Round starts and he applies pressure and A main with his util, and here's two things.
With the turret.
An Omen teleport,
Omen turreted here.
Up you go. Dizzy has
Jet with the
Jet
operator.
Opera and
confirming at least 2 enemies playing aggressively towards A. Soon after, the enemy breach uses his stun from tree, confirming 3 defenders towards A. Let's imagine that line we talked about earlier. Omen and Jet are somewhere here on A site with breach and tree, very heavily defended and tight line to break through. If we use the 2-1-2 setup rule, we can assume that breach is the mid player acting as a support for the 2 A players, meaning that Sova and Killjoy are on or towards B. Assuming this, where is the line weakest? If we imagine that line between all defenders, regardless of where the closest B player is, it is the thinnest and weakest here towards bottom mid. Boaster takes into account all of that info and immediately makes the call to rotate and split B.
We should go B split then.
With 3 defenders towards A and with A short preoccupied, it's safe to assume that a defender might be close to bottom mid, either in market or defender spawn to prevent a breach in the line. Anticipating this, Boaster sends wingman out to clear market. The Sova stays and gets 2 picks, one of which is the enemy Sova. Right around the same time, Killjoy is spotted in B and is quickly taken care of. We know from the beginning of the round that both Omen and Breach are towards A, leaving B wide open. So, what are the takeaways? For defenders, be able to identify the difference between pressure and commits. Play an anchor for each site to combat over-rotating, and for attackers, imagine the line using the 2-1-2 setup in mind. Try to poke around and exploit the weaker points in the line to determine a mid-round rotate. Hopefully you learned something new, and if you did, let me know. I'll see you guys in 2 months, if we're lucky.
CT.
I have it.
No man. Sam, whatever happens,
I love you.
Yeah.
That was so poetic and beautiful. Oh my goodness.